Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. See you soon, Claire. You didn't think you could just leave, did you? I've always known where you were. That little bus station in the city. That motel with the flickering sign on the side of the motorway. I was watching you, even then. How you clutch your bag when you sleep. How you leave the TV on static to drown out the sound of your thoughts. You're clever, slippery, but not clever enough. I have to admit, you know how to cover your tracks, but you should know that you can't shake off your own tail. You're not running away from me. You're running toward me. You'll see soon. Sweet dreams. Wow. Creepy. Not sure how you got this address, but congrats, I guess. Nice to know I'm living rent-free in your head. FYI, the bus station smelled like pee, and the motel had roaches. So maybe put your stalking budget toward better accommodations next time. Only, of course, if there is a next time. But I wouldn't get my hopes up if I were you. Also, if you're going to kill me, maybe don't warn me first. That's kind of, I don't know, sloppy. Anyway, I've got to go. I'm going on a hitchhiking date with a guy named Dave. He says he's got a van. Don't worry, I checked, and there's no candy. Best, Claire. Pencil. Dave has a record. 2 assaults. 1 missing person case. You're not as sharp as you think. Do you know how easy it would be for me to get to you? To pull you from that van before Dave even knows what's happening? The door's unlocked. Sleep tight. Very funny. Except you can't be outside because I'm writing this from the bathroom at a gas station. And I'm pretty sure the only person outside is the clerk on his smoke break. Unless you've taken up vaping? Mint flavored, I hope. But seriously, do you actually think this whole mysterious stalker act is working? Because from where I'm sitting, on a suspiciously sticky toilet seat, by the way, you owe me for that. You sound kind of desperate, following me across 3 states, tracking my every move, writing me these cryptic little notes like some kind of B-list Bond villain. Feels like a lot of effort for someone who insists they're the one in control. And if you know so much, if you've been watching me this whole time, tell me this. Why am I running? Seriously. Enlighten me. You should know why. Unless you don't, which would mean you're not half as smart as you think you are. I need to stop writing now, since someone's knocking on the stall door, and I don't feel like explaining Why I've been loitering in the bathroom with a notepad. Best, Claire. You're running because you're scared, but not of me. The thing you're running from is already in the room with you. Turn around. Right there. I think you've got this whole dynamic twisted. You think I'm scared of you? Cute. You've been following me, sure. But have you noticed the trail of bodies in my wake? Dave made it exactly 27 miles before he swerved into a ditch. Poor guy. Guess he shouldn't have tried to pull that knife. The clerk at the gas station. You'll see his face on the news soon. Well, most of it. So yeah, maybe I'm running, but not from you. You're not hunting me. I'm hunting you. See you soon. Interesting. You always were a quick study. I underestimated you. My mistake. But you're wrong about one thing. I'm not hunting you anymore. I'm inviting you. There's a cabin in the woods, just outside the circus. Red door, broken window. I'll leave the door unlocked. If you're as brave as you think you are, come find me. Or maybe I'll find you first. By circa, you mean the festival extravaganza, right? Cute. I'll bring wine, and maybe a shovel. See you soon, Claire. Yeah, I knew you'd come. I saw you the second you stepped into the woods. That red jacket of yours stands out in the dark like a beacon. You really should have chosen something less noticeable, or maybe you wanted me to see you. Either way, you're here now. I left a present for you. I thought I might as well give you a chance. The knife I pinned this letter down with is all yours. I trust you know how to use it. Do you feel it? The cold sinking into your bones. The silence pressing down on you. That sound behind you. The snap of a branch. That wasn't an animal. You've been so clever up to this point. So slippery. So sharp. But even the smartest prey makes a mistake eventually. And you've just made yours. Don't bother running. I'm already behind you. You're right. I felt you the moment I crossed the tree line. I knew you were there. I could almost hear your breathing. Shallow, controlled, waiting. But you made a mistake, too. You let me get too close. I know it's rude. But I'm going to have to return you kind gift. A girl can't have too many of a good thing, or it gets boring. I felt the heat of your breath on the back of my neck, and I smiled, because I'm not scared of you anymore. Not that I ever was, and you'll never get the chance to write me again. Clever girl, but not clever enough. See you soon. An incident report. Missing person. Claire Marie Jenkins. Location. Isolated cabin. Festival extravaganza. Details. The cabin was found empty upon arrival. Blood splatters were present, but no bodies recovered. Signs of struggle. One broken window. Unidentified footprints lead into the woods. No return tracks. A single sheet of paper was discovered, pinned to the cabin wall with a knife. It read, "Not yet. Claire is presently missing at time of report. Background checks show that she must have changed her identity. Or she didn't have any family. Immediate or extended. Case remains open. for such a time as this. Once a week, for the past 10 weeks, Hattie had come to the local cafe for Bible study with a few of her friends from church. It was led by Marissa, one of the long-standing members of the church. Once a week, for the past 10 weeks, Hattie had left the cafe feeling uplifted, inspired, and closer to her Creator. And this week, the 11th week, she expected no different. Uplifting music wafted through the speakers, mixing with the sounds of dishes clanking and milk frothing behind the counter. The familiar noise was music to Hattie's ears as she entered the coffee shop. "Hattie!" Carmen squealed, beckoning Hattie over from the door. "Coffee's on me today. I got you your usual." Hattie smiled. Carmen was the personification of generosity, although that wasn't always the case. "How are you doing?" she asked, sliding into the booth that they always sat at. "Better than I deserve," Harper quoted, appearing behind them. It's what Carmen always said when asked that question. It's the truth. God is so good. As long as I'm breathing, it's more than I deserve. She shrugged. Harper slid into the booth next to Hattie, smiling. "Is Marissa late for the first time ever?" Hattie asked, looking around. "I thought I saw her car outside." In response, Marissa came out of the bathroom and joined the 3 college girls at their booth. "Good morning, girls," she said, eyes bright, as she took her seat next to Carmen. The 4 girls took each other's hands, and Marissa opened them in prayer before they opened their Bibles and began reading and discussing the book of Esther. Is it wrong to be so engrossed in divine wisdom that you lose track of what's happening around you? Surely not, although it can be dangerous. What is wrong is to come into a quiet, privately owned cafe at 11:38 a.m., lock the doors, aim a gun at the ceiling, and set it off. Which is exactly what happened next. The shot rang out in the near silence of the cafe, piercing through the air like only a bullet can, sending a singing bell into the ears of all who were near it. A young child across the shop screamed and was instantly grabbed by his mother, who hid under a table with her back to the aisle, blocking anyone from getting her child. A barista dropped a porcelain cup out of shock, and it shattered on the floor, spilling hot liquid everywhere. Hattie cupped her hands over her mouth so as to not scream. "Everybody hold up your phones," the man shouted, swinging his gun around. "Hold them up high." It took no time at all for everyone to comply. "Good. Now you." He pointed his gun at the man who was standing at the counter. "Go and get them. Bring all the phones to me." The barista couldn't have been more than 17, and his hands shook as he went around to each table and collected the phones. That 17-year-old boy wasn't religious, but at that moment, he was praying. Praying that somebody, anybody, had called the police. "It'll be okay, girls," Marissa whispered. Hattie could tell that she was trying to be strong, but she could also see the fear in her eyes when she glanced at the man with the gun. "You four." The man pointed his gun in the direction of Hattie and her friends, and it was at that point that Harper began to cry. "In front of the door. Stand." None of them knew what he meant, but he motioned for them to get up. And since he had a gun, they did what he asked. Then he did it again to the next table, making them stand in front of the windows. Soon, the whole store was stood in front of the glass entrance to the small cafe, including the little boy and his mother. While he was lining them up, the sound of sirens began, getting louder and louder, closer and closer, until they were too loud for Hattie to bear, and she covered her ears. Henry Walker, an amplified and slightly muffled voice, said from outside, "This is the New York City Police Department. We have the building surrounded. Come out with your hands up." Of course, Henry did no such thing, but waved his gun in the air, almost as if he was saying, "Don't try me." Next to Hattie, Carmen was holding her necklace so tightly that her knuckles were turning white, while her other hand was entwined with Harper's. Marissa's lips were moving, but there was no sound coming out. She was praying. Not a bad idea, Hattie thought. So she joined in. She closed her eyes and began to pray. As she did, words from the passages that the four girls had been going through came to mind. It was a popular verse, seen on stickers and coffee mugs, for such a time as this. Of course, the full verse was a bit more convicting, but that's the part that rang through Hattie's young mind as the minutes turned into hours. There was a clock on the wall behind the shop counter, and it served as a reminder of just how long these people had been standing here. 2:30, 3 hours, and the police had done nothing. "Why aren't they just coming in?" someone asked to Hattie's left. "We're blocking the door. They no doubt have a sniper on the roof, waiting to take the shot. But they can't, because they might hit one of us," she responded, her voice low. It had been too long standing here. She didn't want to do this, but she had put it off long enough. She took a deep breath, in and out. It always brought her peace, ever since she read that the name Yahweh was originally written without any vowels, and that in every breath you could hear it being said. Once she took a deep breath, she stepped forward, just a little bit. "What are you doing?" the guy with the gun asked, aiming his weapon at her chest. "Get back in line." "You don't look so good," Hattie said, her voice shaking ever so slightly. "Can I get you a cup of water?" Henry stared at her as he considered this, evaluating, calculating, risk assessing. Hattie was doing the same, taking in the blood soaking into the side of his shirt, the sweat dripping down his face, and the wideness of his eyes. "What's your name?" Henry narrowed his eyes at her. Hadassah, people call me Hattie. No one called the girl by her real name these days, but she told him anyways. I just thought that you might feel better if you had a cup of water. Sorry. Hadassah, yes, I think a cup of water would help me feel better. Thank you. Can you get one for me? Hattie nodded, the weight of her decision settling in. No longer was she glanced over as just another piece of a hoard, but now she had been called out. She was in this. It took all of her strength to take the next few steps. All of them brought her closer to a dangerous man who seemingly did not care about her safety. But there was still a little inkling in the back of her mind, a blossom of hope that slowly bloomed as she poured some water from the tap into a plastic cup and brought it to him. That maybe, just maybe, this would all go to plan. Hope that they would all make it out of this alive. Henry, still suspicious, took the cup from Hattie, but said nothing. She looked back toward the front window, at all the other customers who were looking at her like a madman. Everyone watched with a sort of anticipation as he drank the entire cup greedily. I need more, please, Hadassah. He handed the cup back to Hattie, and she filled it again, and then gave it back. Once he had drunk his fill, he sent Hattie back to the front of the shop. 45 minutes passed. This time, Hattie's voice shook even more when she stepped forward and said, "Excuse me, what is it, Hadassah?" Henry asked, but he didn't point the gun at her. "I'm really very sorry to interrupt you like this, but I couldn't help but notice that you're bleeding. I'm training to be an EMT. I could patch you up, if you'd like." Now, if it had been almost any other person in the cafe who asked this, they would have been turned down. But Hattie had somehow managed to find favor in the eyes of this man, and therefore he nodded, beckoning her forward for the second time. "The first aid kit is behind the counter," Hattie said, pointing. He allowed her to go and get it, and when she had, the two of them sat down at one of the tables and got to work, while Hattie cut his shirt open so she could clean the wound and examine it. Henry kept his gun trained on the front of the store so that no one would try to escape while he was inconvenienced. "You've been kind to me, Hadassah." "Why?" Henry asked. Hattie pushed her glasses up with the back of her wrist. "I don't think that you're a very bad person. I think that sometimes people get mixed up in bad things. Things that grab a hold of them and try to drag them down into the depths of darkness. Sometimes, when something's got a hold of someone, they can't get out on their own. Sometimes, we need to lend a hand to those who are wrestling with evil." "And what if I really am a bad person?" Henry responded. "Well, then, that would make all of us. But there's a difference between a bad person and a bad person who's trying to be better." Hattie threaded some string on a surgical needle. And if you'll allow me, I'd like to help you with that. I want to be the hand that gives you what you need to win this fight with darkness. It was truly a miracle that she had said all that without tripping on her words or messing up with her stitches. She tied the string off and cut it, then lowered Henry's shirt back down. The injury wasn't what she had been expecting. Honestly, she thought he might have been shot, but it was still a deep scrape that needed patched up. And how would you do that? Henry asked, taking her wrist. When he looked at her, Hattie noticed that his eyes were different than they had been. They were searching instead of wandering, passionate instead of crazed. Help me, I mean. Well, it could start by the two of us sitting down and having a very serious conversation about what it means to be good or evil and how we can change at all. And then, depending on what you decide, it would probably end with you getting in one of those cop cars and atoning for what you've done up to this point. Henry nodded, and Hattie sat with him, silently asking for wisdom on what she should say. With a steadying breath, she decided to start by explaining the gospel to him, starting at the beginning, like she had been taught to do. She explained how God made the world, made us perfect, but then how we fell into sin. She explained separation from God and what that meant for us in our fallen state. And then she told Henry, who was listening intently, as though this was the only thing he ever had to think about. Henry, why are we here today? What made you decide to do this? Hattie asked when she had gone through her spiel. I got in with some rough people. We did something bad, he said, head in his hands. Police pulled up, and I didn't want to get caught, so I ran. Figured I could do what they do in the movies and negotiate my escape. Wasn't till I got in here that I remembered. Henry looked up at Hattie, eyes shining with tears. Bad guy never gets out of the situation in the movies. Okay. Hattie nodded. So what's next? Everyone goes home, Henry whispered, taking in a shaky breath. And I go to prison. Hattie stood and turned to the rest of the people in the cafe. And Henry put the gun on the table, away from him. Go home. Hattie told everyone along the window, smiling. Then she sat back down and faced the criminal before her, asked him how he was feeling, listened intentionally only to him while a SWAT team came in and surrounded them both. Henry had long since broken down into tears and was shaking with sobs so hard that he couldn't even hold his hands up in surrender. He didn't protest when they put the cuffs on him and read him his rights, or when he got it in the back of a police car. When it was all over, Hattie put her head down in her arms on the table. She did not anticipate how exhausting it would be to evangelize at gunpoint. Her friends came back in and laid a blanket over her, matching the ones wrapped around them. Shock blankets, they were called. "Hattie, that was so stupid and brave," Carmen said, sitting next to her. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Just doing what had to be done," Hattie responded, looking up from the table to her friends. "We should go get ice cream," Harper said, then quickly amended, "through the drive-through." Hattie snorted, laughing. "I have ice cream in my dorm room. Come on." The four girls left the cafe and drove to the college, each separately praying a little prayer of gratitude on the drive over, and then finished their Bible study in the comfort of Hattie's living room, with bowls of chocolate ice cream next to them. When Henry's trial came 2 weeks later, Hattie attended. She watched him plead guilty and apologize to the people he had hurt. She didn't visit him in prison, but wrote him letters of encouragement every once in a while. When he wrote back that he had become a Christian, she shared it with everyone in her church. Overjoyed, after a year or so, the four girls decided to try the coffee shop again. And so now, every week for the past 10 weeks, Hattie, along with a new friend named Maya, has gone to the little family-owned cafe for a Bible study with a few of her friends from church. She'd walk in and hear the quiet, uplifting music and the gentle bustle of the few people inside, and smell the fresh ground coffee beans and vanilla. Then Maya and Hattie would see Carmen, who had dyed her blonde hair bright orange since last week, and Harper with her new engagement ring, and Marissa, who was now pregnant. And they'd sit and talk and read and pray, just as they expected to do for the next 10 weeks. I remember her, the first time I laid eyes on her. She knocked at the wooden door. I knew it wasn't an adult knocking. I just know these things. The sound was light, timid, and just a bit too low on the door to belong to someone grown. I walked across my living room, the floorboards creaking under my weight, and unlocked the door. As I pulled it open, the hinges groaned softly, and there she was, standing on my porch, waiting for me. She came to me, and I knew it was her. I knew right away she was the one I'd been waiting for. I felt it. It's hard to put into words, but if I had to, it was like being struck by lightning in the pit of my stomach, a surge of electric energy coursing through me and ending in a sharp, tingling burst at the base of my skull. She was tiny, small even for her age, and her presence seemed to shrink further under the weight of the gray autumn sky. Her long blonde hair framed her round cheeks, dampened slightly by the drizzle that had been falling all afternoon. Her light blue eyes, startling in their clarity, reflected the dull brown of my front door, as if they were trying to absorb everything around her. She smiled then, just a flicker of a smile, timid, shy. It might have been imperceptible to someone else, but I saw it. I knew it was there. "Hi," she said, her voice barely louder than the wind rustling through the bare trees. I crouched to her level, studying her face as if I might find answers etched in the softness of her features. "Hello," I replied, the word catching in my throat. Her small hands clutched a green box close to her chest, a makeshift tray hanging from her neck with an assortment of colorful packages. "I'm from Troop 195 of the Girl Scouts," she said, her voice steadier now, though still carrying a gentle, unpracticed rhythm. "I'm selling cookies to finance our trip to Washington next year. Would you like to help?" I blinked, her words pulling me from the strange fog that had overtaken me since I first saw her. "I'd love to help," I said, forcing a smile. "What exactly are you selling?" She brightened, her confidence growing with every word. "I have caramel chocolate chip, do-si-dos, lemon-ups, and thin mints." I nodded slowly, leaning one arm on the door frame. "Those all sound delicious." And they did, each one of them. I wasn't lying. I'm not a liar. I've always tried to tell the truth, to open up to anyone who showed even the slightest interest in, well, in me. It's rare enough that someone does. "Which ones would you suggest?" I asked, genuinely curious. "The do-si-dos are the most popular," she replied, a practiced response, one she'd probably used at every house she'd visited. I tilted my head. "Are those your favorite?" Her expression softened, her small fingers playing with the corner of a box in her tray. "No, I like the Girl Scouts s'mores. But," she hesitated, her eyes meeting mine, "we're all out of those." She seemed genuinely saddened by that, and I could see it in her eyes. That's something I've always been able to do. Read people, see the emotions they hide behind words and smiles. It's a sensitivity I've had since I was a boy, and it hasn't faded with time. "How about this?" I said, my voice lowering, like I was sharing a secret. "Give me 2 boxes of do-si-dos now, and when you get more Girl Scout s'mores, I want you to come back here and bring me 10 boxes of those." Her face lit up, her smile blooming into something real and full. It wasn't timid anymore. It was happy, proud. She looked like she'd just conquered a mountain, a small victory in a world that often feels insurmountable at her age. "Really?" she asked, her voice rising with excitement. "Really?" I said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out the cash. I handed it to her. She reached for it, her movements unhurried. And as she did, I let 3 of my fingers graze the back of her small hand. It was a fleeting touch, imperceptible to her, or at least I thought it was. But I noticed. I noticed how her skin quivered ever so slightly under my fingertips, like the faintest ripple in still water. She quickly pulled the money back, her attention shifting as she counted it with practiced efficiency. Then, tucking the bills into the small pouch at her side, She handed me the 2 boxes with both hands. She held them out as though they were treasures, precious and fragile, the way a child often treats even the simplest things. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice louder now, the earlier shyness melting away. "I'm happy to help," I replied, meaning it. She turned to leave, clutching her tray of cookies like a prize. At the edge of the porch, she paused and looked back at me, her eyes wide and sparkling with gratitude. "I promise I'll come back when we get more s'mores." "I'll be waiting," I said, watching as she skipped down the driveway, her small frame disappearing into the gray drizzle. I stood there for a moment, holding the boxes of cookies in my hands, feeling a strange warmth that wasn't entirely explainable. It wasn't about the cookies or the sale. It was about the way her smile had lit up the gray, how her small victory had momentarily lifted inside me. I closed the door and set the boxes on the counter. For a long time, I just stared at them, my mind replaying the exchange. Something about it had settled deeply in me, a seed waiting to grow, but her room wasn't ready. I needed to get it ready for her, to make it perfect, comfortable, a place where she could grow strong and healthy and happy. She deserved that, so I worked at it tirelessly, transforming the cold, gray basement into a beautiful sanctuary. The walls, once lifeless and bare, were painted a soft, light pink, the kind of color that whispered warmth and innocence. A bed with a quilted blanket sat in the corner, flanked by a small table with a lamp shaped like a butterfly. I built a shelf, filling it with hundreds of children's books, toys, and dolls. Every detail mattered. A camera sat discreetly in the top corner of the room, its lens fixed on the space where she would sleep and play. It wasn't about control. It was about safety. I added a lock to the heavy wooden door, one that could only be opened from the outside. It wasn't to trap her, no. It was to keep the world out, to ensure nothing could hurt her. The best part, though, was the shopping. I spent hours picking out clothes for her, envisioning her wearing them, imagining how she'd look. I chose soft fabrics in bright, cheerful colors, clothes she could wear now, and some she'd grow into over time. Each piece felt like a step closer to her, to making her mine. And then I waited. I waited for her to come back. Days turned into weeks, and still I waited. The 2 binders of cookies sat on the counter, untouched. I couldn't bring myself to open them. Instead, I would trace my fingers along their edges, touching the cardboard like I had touched her hand. Sometimes I'd lift one to my face, inhaling the faint mix of packaging and something else, something peculiar, and fleeting. The smell of her, the anticipation was unbearable. A constant hum under my skin. Each creak of the floorboards, each knock at the door, sent my heart racing, hoping it would be her. But she didn't come back, not yet. I knew she would, though. She had to. I'd made everything perfect. And then, one day, her knock came. It wasn't just any knock. It was her knock. I knew it instantly, even before my body moved to rise from the couch. I felt it in my chest, in my veins. A spark of anticipation coursing through me. The moment I'd been waiting for, the moment I'd been preparing for, was here. The chance to see her again, to look into her bright eyes, to show her what I had built for her, because of her. Because she was the one. It was her. I crossed the room in a few quick strides, unlocked the door, and pulled it open. There she stood, with that smile. It wasn't as shy as before, more certain now, like she knew she was welcome, like she belonged here. In her hands, she held a neat stack of cookie boxes, her reason for coming back. Or so she thought. I smiled at her, a warmth creeping into my voice that I couldn't mask. "It's good to see you again," I said. She beamed, her cheeks flushed from the cool air. "I have your cookies, and since it's such a big order, I added a pack of lemon ups for free." "Well, now that's very kind of you," I replied, my tone light and friendly. I slipped my hands into my pockets, pretending to search for the cash. My fingers met empty fabric, as I knew they would. I hadn't carried any money in weeks. The truth was, I didn't want to hand her the money here on the porch. Not this time. I needed her to come inside. I looked up at her, feigning a small chuckle. "Looks like I forgot my wallet. It's inside, in the kitchen," I said, gesturing behind me. It wasn't a lie. I don't lie. I never lie. My wallet was in the kitchen, sitting right on the counter, next to the untouched cookie boxes from her first visit. The ones I had been saving for this moment. Her smile didn't falter. She nodded, clutching the boxes tighter. "Oh, that's okay," she said, ever the accommodating Girl Scout. "Why don't you come in?" I asked, stepping aside and motioning to the warmth of the house behind me. "It's cold out there, and you've been walking all afternoon, haven't you?" She hesitated for a moment, her gaze flicking to the open door, the inviting glow of the living room beyond. Then she smiled again, this time with a hint of excitement, like this was just another part of her adventure. "Okay," she said, stepping inside. I closed the door behind her, the sound of the latch clicking into place, sending a thrill through me. It wasn't loud, but to me, it echoed. I turned to her, my smile steady, my heart pounding. "Make yourself at home," I said, my voice calm and even. "Let me grab that money for you." She nodded, her eyes wandering around the room, her curiosity as innocent as ever. She was perfect. Perfect. And she was finally here. Oh, do I remember her. The way her muffled cries felt against my left hand as I pressed it over her mouth, lifting her from the ground with my right arm. She bit down hard and kicked wildly, her small shoes landing against my legs, but I barely felt it. I told myself it was normal. She didn't understand. Not yet. She couldn't comprehend what I had done for her, what I had built, the sacrifices I had made. Not yet. Her body thrashed against mine as I carried her, her weight so light it felt like she might vanish. But she wouldn't. Not now. Not ever. I took her down the stairs, each step an echo in the stillness of the house, and through the door. Not a room, not just any room. Her room. This was the place I had prepared for her. The place where she would grow, where she would finally be safe, where I could ensure nothing and no one could hurt her. I would see to that. Only me. I would witness every moment, every milestone. She would know, in time, how much I cared, how much I loved her. I threw her onto the bed, her small frame bouncing once before she scrambled back, pressing herself against the pink walls I had painted just for her. She screamed, her voice raw and high, tears streaming down her red face. "Please, let me go. Please," she begged, her words garbled through sobs, her tiny hands clawing at the quilted blanket I had chosen with such care. But I knew it would pass. It always passed. The crying, the yelling, the fear, it would all melt away after a few weeks. It always did. She just needed time to see, time to realize that this wasn't what she thought it was. This was better. "It's okay," I said, my voice steady, calm, trying to cut through her cries. "You'll understand soon. I promise." Her tears only fell faster, and her words dissolved into incoherent sobbing. I watched her for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest, but not from regret or hesitation. It was from the sheer anticipation of what was to come. This was just the beginning, and like I said, I don't lie. I never lie. But they didn't understand that. They didn't understand anything. They took her away from me just 3 days after she got here. 3 days. That's all the time we had. They stormed in like animals, breaking through the front and back doors, screaming, their boots pounding on the floors. I had walked in peace for years, and the guns. Oh, the guns. Pointed at me, me, who had kept her safe. Me, who had given her a sanctuary, a place where she could be loved, cared for, where she could grow without fear. They didn't see the love in my eyes, the care in my hands, the way I had worked so hard to make her life perfect. They only saw their own distorted version of the story, their judgment cutting through my truth. They didn't understand. Oh, I remember her. I've remembered her every single day for the past 24 years, 364 days, and 6 hours. I know because I've counted. I've counted every second, every breath, every heartbeat that has passed since the moment they tore her from me. But now, just a few more days, just a little more time, and we will be reunited. Finally, I've waited for this. I've prepared for it because, like I said, I don't lie. I never lie. Bloody tea leaves and fucking coffee beans. They banned folks from toting teapots and kettles, classifying them as weapons of war. Frank remembers clearly that day, the day Dictator-in-Chief declared a state of emergency. Remembers all the stooges and quislings who clapped. Remembers the collective liberal orgasm, and how the elites, academics, and cultural icons collectively smirked. Then came the run-of-the-mill anecdotes, soldiers whose scalded limbs had been, or had to be, amputated. Women whose lives had been altered because the long arm of the law couldn't prevent their partners from keeping tea leaves and coffee beans on their shelves, under pillows, and in their pockets everywhere they went. Even children were paraded about, exploited as a major reason tea and coffee had to be abolished from both street corner and corner cafe. Of course, Starbucks and Dunkin's went into a frenzy. Their lobbyists and plants in press rooms went to town. They were neither alone nor wrong. Frank and other tea addicts and coffee fiends went into overdrive too. Government officials, armed to the teeth, retaliated, confiscating cups, teapots, and everything construed as having the potential for making tea. Even bloody spoons. He fought back when they kicked his front door in. He was made a prisoner under the law, but worse, under a presumptuous therapist. 2. You think I'm crazy, don't you? You think I'm all bonkers? What makes you think I think that, Frank? That you just did it. What did I do? Tried to be clever. People like you? People like me? Yes. Like you. Yes. Like my wife. Educated. Yet godless. People like me loathe people like you as much as you hate us. She asked incessantly and prodded deeper. He eventually talked about war, about his role in the last one, and about man in general, and the eternal romance between him and war. He licked his lips and rubbed his hands together as he spoke. You want to know why man keeps to war, Miss Hatina? She nodded. War don't file for divorce. She choked on her own saliva. We'll come to your ex-wife later. Let's stick to the war for now. They talked about it briefly. A lukewarm room becoming warmer. If you've never watched a friend's head split in half, you've no reason to sit there and tell me about this BPST nonsense. All this PTSD, whatever the creature's name is called. I saw real creatures, fought real dragons. Death was both my enemy and soulmate. She sat there and listened, and listened, and listened. With 7 minutes on the clock remaining, she finally cleared her throat. I don't understand everything you went through, Frank, and I'll never pretend to. My job is only to help. He nodded. She continued, because there's some good place in your soul, Frank. I want you to lead me there. Meanwhile, I'll be interpreting the road signs as we encounter them for you. Do you want me to come along? He smiled. The soldiers guarding his fort chose to lower both sword and spear. I guess you, the 6-foot-something battle-hardened soldier in the arena of the mind, Miss Hatina, you're correct. But since we'll be walking to a faraway place together, I guess you can call me Rose. Rumor had it I'd be talking to a Mrs. something. She showed him the finger where a ring used to be, and Frank, well, beamed. 3. They banned them from toting teacups, spoons, sugar basins, and so forth. That's why you won't find them on Main Street anymore. Starbucks was shut down. Dunkin's will follow soon, unless they agree to sell frappes and ice cream exclusively. Beverages that don't burn women and children. Frank finds himself in a maze, zigzagging his way in the slippery alleyways of downtown Kiwagama to quench his craving for the hot stuff, a thirst he contracted on the front lines. Dilapidated buildings cry through rusty gutters. Neon lights stutter like a car with insufficient dinosaur juice. A black cat meows and crosses in front of him. A dog howls at the thinnest slice of moon cosmically possible. A drunk slips. His bottle turns to powder in a muddy puddle. Steam rises from a manhole. Dear steam. A whiff of it dances towards the moon. Like an apparition, a shadow appears from around the corner and whistles at Frank. He follows. Not long after, an iron door gaps its jaws open and swallows Frank and his guide. Men with steaming teapots and kettles on the verge of hissing surround him. The spouts are longer than Pinocchio's nose after his girlfriend asks how she looks in some silly Halloween costume. Salt water germinates from his every pore, and his bladder tightens as they frisk him. Satisfied, they conceal their beverage brewers in their roomy jackets. He's led up a staircase whose stairwells are carpeted by needles, broken bottles, and used condoms. The air is damp and putrid. Steam rises. Steam, steam, steam. He shivers from steam that refuses to be blown off. Steam that, left unchecked, will one day be sufficient to power a dystopian locomotive. A CCTV camera buzzes. Feet are dragged towards the door. Crimson light radiates from a peephole before the deadbolt clinks. Come in. says a tall, broad-shouldered fellow with a huge scar waiting to spring from under his long beard and show its fangs. For, in every session thereafter, she helped him paint a picture. He talked about war, asked about university. She painted the experience in mostly positive terms. Loads of hookups, he said. They were getting too cozy. Not enough, she answered with pouted lips. I noticed a hickey on your neck the other day, coupled with what you just told me. Is that why you broke up? Cold intimacy, the lack thereof? Frank, this is all I'm going to say about this. I was once upon a time a happily married woman, until I wasn't. Well, that makes two of us, if it makes you feel better. You see, I might not have fought a war, but we've so much in common than you think. He beamed. Do we now? I believe all humans have. What really happened, Rose? I understand the power dynamic here, but even Mussolini dangled carrots. She laughed. Okay then. We got lazy, grew tired, and drifted apart. He blames me, and I blame him. You've kids? No, Frank, we don't. Do you date? She froze and cursed herself for being sidetracked so easily. Tell me about your upbringing, Frank. He talked about his childhood stammer, about his first crush, then opened up about his father. All my friends had their dads present growing up. They went fishing, threw ball, showed up at games. What did I have? An absent dad and absent-minded mother whose descriptions of my pops when we had conversations about him were pretty ugly. Basically, called him a brute. After which she'd tell me I was my father's child whenever I did something. Like what? Hit someone in the head with a bat. She jotted something in her notebook. He started to realize, on his own, how the heat of life and circumstance has been bringing him to a boil ever since childhood. No wonder he felt like exploding and powering steam engines while at it. He talked about how he found himself in a vortex of alcohol, syringes, and women with brown teeth and skimpy clothes as soon as he hit puberty. Why do you think you went there? She said, sipping hot beverage he said he'd never been a fan of. Truthfully, bigger boys convinced us smaller ones that was what being a man was all about. But you didn't like it? Well, you know even hell has its moments, I'd wager. She chuckled. What changed? An STI. She giggled some. He saw it and chuckled wryly. I realized being a man doesn't always mean you should die early or pointlessly. Like, if you're gonna die early anyway, like I always felt I would. Why not spend your short life in the defense of others? You became a man, definitely. Served my country, came back, got married, had a kid. Then she left with another man. A long pause in which all the sound heard was sipping and stirring of tea. But ironically, the steam which rose to the ceiling and covered the room in a wasn't from the beverage. It was from the purple reservoir of his emotions. She'd to turn the air conditioner on. After his kettle stopped whistling, she ventured. How did that make you feel? That I should have died in the war. What about now? Sweaty, hot, fuming, jealous. I don't know. You're lying to me, Frank. Redness reappeared on Frank's face. I feel like shit, if you really want to know. Why? That's what I'm here to understand, ain't it? I'm here to help. Just. It alternates between I screwed up, my wife screwed me over by screwing some screw up, or the screw up who screwed my wife screwed me over. My mind ain't sure what to hold on to. Ex-wife now, Frank. Remember, she's water under the bridge now. A thick vein popped on the man's forehead. She was stolen from me. She made a choice, Frank. His voice brewed a purple storm. They took the house. My fucking house. By law, Frank. Frank threw the notebook on his lap at the window. It sublimated into shards. He pushed the couch back violently and wagged his fist at thin air. They took my daughter from me. Is that the law, too? No? Yes? Well, I'll tell you what. The law is wrong for taking my daughter away from me. The law is bloody wrong. 5. The dealer finishes a call before his attention turns to Frank. 2 ladies flank him on either side, gyrating slightly to the thumping of 808s coming from an adjoining room. There's a bouncer on each of the 4 corners of the makeshift office space. My boy, Frankie. When my boys told me about you, ain't believed shit they said. Said you was a big man now. Told them every big man's working for me since the ban. He laughs. But here you are. You done become bigger than a hippo. In good ways, of course. Thanks, Bobo. What if I make you offer? Huh? For old time's sake. Frank fidgets excessively. What offer? Come work for me. There's good money here. Big, fat money to be made. An older lady brings glass whiskey in 2 glasses. With all due respect, Bobo, says Frank soon after the lady leaves. Ain't looking for no job. The room goes taut. So why's you here, Frankie? They take turns to sip the old man's health. Frank's gaze darts about. For, you know, the thing? Frankie, don't try to be clever with me. I know you here for the hot stuff. But why is what I ask you? Because, Bobo, only you knows how to get things like that. Bobo smiles proudly. What you want the hottie-hottie for? Self-defense. There's an entire ministry of, I trust my own fingers than the entire ministry. Bobo laughs and claps his hands. Perfect. Had to test you to see whether you bulk under pressure or not. I only deal with solid folk. He regards Frank for a bit. The latter breathes heavily. Steam blows out of his ears and nose like a malfunctioning toy dragon. But he keeps still. I ain't one to judge. But anger breeds nothing. Frankie, nothing. Forget that woman. You come work with me. There's plenty of women to pass around here. See all this? Plenty. Does the package you suggesting include my daughter? Bobo gestures for something to be brought into the room. He does the sign of the cross. Anger burns you, Frankie boy. You, not nobody else. God won't say, I didn't warn y'alls. They bring the man his order. A collector's wet dream. Like one of those brewing pots Grandpa used to keep, and Grandma used to pester him about. Why you don't keep it as far away from reach as possible. You want your grandkids to be caught up in that life too? Grandpa had a well-known addiction for the stimulant. He'd a lot of scars to show for the burns he'd endured over the years. Because anytime's tea time. That's why. Looks good alrighty, Frankie? Frank nods. Good. But where's the coffee beans? Where's the what? I'm sorry. I'm used to calling, aha! Coffee beans. I think I know what coffee beans is. Gary, you get it too? One of the bodyguards nods when the dealer looks at him. He turns back to Frank. You a clever buggers, Frankie. Pity you don't want work. We could use some creativity here. Martin, you brought this man a pot of steaming nothing, you see? Bring the man his bloody tea leaves and fucking coffee beans. Money exchanges hands. So does a brown paper bag in the opposite direction. Frank starts to leave. Remember, don't spill the beans about me, Frankie, or my men will spill something hot on your baby girl. And unlike you, I'm a very literal man. 6. They texted and laughed and looked each other in the eye. When they looked each other in the eye long enough, the hands of her eyes pulled his face closer. Space between them crumbled. Their faces rammed into each other's. Sparks flew. Passions exploded into groaning, screaming, and orgasms. They met at the office to talk about demons, online to flirt, and at her place to talk about the future. She showed him a diary she kept when she was 6. He noticed a particular motif. On every other page was a rough sketch of a girl carrying things like knives, razors, guns, and catapults. You wanted to hurt someone? Frank said, after kissing her bare chest. Kill someone. Well, did you succeed? Not that I'm aware of. Who are all these people? Everyone. I hated everyone. My sis was too pretty. My cousin was too liked. Hannah Montana was too popular. She's in here? Flip a page. Again. There she is. God, you were so twisted. What changed? She sighed. A ballpoint pen and a teapot. What? We'd a bully at school. A boy who got away with everything. One time, I snapped and sunk my bic in his face. God, yeah. It was atrocious. Got me expelled. Mom thought I'd learnt my lesson. Grandma thought not. She boiled water in a kettle and called me over. Made me stretch my hands towards the pot. Don't tell me she poured hot water on your hands. Fingers. Yeah, that's a lot better. She's like, every time you let your anger boil over and think about hurting someone, think about this kettle. Today, I'm the one pouring hot water on you. But one day, it will be the world. I'm trying to understand her philosophy, but what does that even mean? Our anger hurts us as much as, or more than, it hurts the people we lash out at. When I'm angry, I think about how much hot water I'm pouring on myself. And it works all the time. Flip a page, again. There you go. That's you in a kitchen. That's me carrying the proverbial teapot. I substituted it for my weapons, sketched it over a knife or a razor. You can do it too. I'm an army man. They recently banned my kind of weapon. Well, I know you know where to get one if you really wanted it. Please think about my grandma's metaphor and me when you think about hurting anyone ever again. You will? I will. They kissed. His hand rested on a breast. Someone opened the door, saw them digging gems out of each other, and dropped the flower bouquet he carried. She leapt from Frank's lap and rushed after him. 7. Above all else, Frank hates liars. The only person he hates more than he who generally lies is he who lies specifically to him, and everyone seems to take advantage of his willingness to give the benefit of doubt. Politicians lied about the war, about its purpose. Now they're lying about the purpose of some laws. But politicians are known to lie. Who believes politicians anyway, in this day and age? His father said he was going around the block. He never returned. Mother lied about why he chose to do that. To save face, his wife. Don't people take "till death do us part" literally anymore? Then there's Rose. No, she's the therapist now. She was cheating on her husband, with him no less, making him no better than his wife's. She's your ex-wife now, lover. You don't do that. And now she's trying to call. He's not picking that. What for? More bullshit? He languishes in his car, busy brewing. 6 tea bags in a kettle, 6 coffee beans in a coffee machine. He turns the knobs to boil until the lid starts dancing and the spout sputtering. A police siren wails. The cabin turns icy. They pass. Steam resumes. He cocks them both. Oops, better stay with Grandma's metaphor. But it's slipping. They banned these from ever finding their way into hands like his. Because of this, he sees them. He sees her. A hot spring blasts the crown of his head. He's out. He's striding. They see him. Too late. Kettle hisses, then regurgitates. It starts raining on him too. Torrential rainfall at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Tea for 3. Checking the day's schedule, Maud looked forward to meeting her first-time client, Silesia. Her daily prep included the wide variety of tea blends sufficient to the day's demands. Maud called her social events pours. Modeled after the traditional Japanese tea ceremony, she aimed deeper than mere tranquility. Her delicious, blended teas reoriented her clients' views of themselves and the world. She tailored each concoction individually by adding herbs and essential oils. Every ingredient was organic and non-toxic. Of course, it was all legal. Maud acquired her skill by studying under a Peruvian shaman for for a decade, her second scheduled client called himself Ted, not his real name. Maud hadn't met him, but she knew him well. A columnist at the local newspaper, he was her most strident critic. Maud intended to reorient Ted's views, good and hard. Ted and other critics claimed Maud ran a cult. She scoffed at such descriptions. They've obviously never attended my tea parties. Clients choose to return. They're not compelled. She maintained a low public profile. Finding self-promotion distasteful, Maud didn't advertise. She didn't need to. Word of mouth brought most of her clients seeking relief from a life out of balance. They generally left happy. Critics wondered why no one in City Hall cared to lift her veil of secrecy. Maud dismissed rumors, claiming she was a close confidant of politicians and society mavens. Maud admitted to modifying the tea ceremony into something unique. Her pours were for anyone seeking to rebalance. The pours logo was a modified yin-yang symbol, depicted as floating within the bowl of a bamboo spoon. She didn't tell fortunes, wasn't a guru, and didn't run a seance, nor was she a matchmaker, though some had found love after meeting through her. That was serendipity at play, not Maud. Maud also adamantly rejected the term therapist. She firmly rejected suggestions her pours were a form of group therapy. She abhorred insinuations that she practiced without a license. As the appointed time for this day's pour approached, Maud prepared a special tea for Ted. Not knowing Silesia's needs and temperament, she waited. Her standard blends would do until she knew more. Maud resisted temptation regarding Ted. Poison was an option to which she refused to stoop. But she had prepared something special for him. Maud was confident that when Ted left the pour, his attitude would be radically different from the one he brought. With a few minutes before the pour, Maud sat in silence, with her hands folded. The bell rang. Maud opened the door to Silesia, wearing a short, strapless sundress and a broad-brimmed straw hat. Silesia thrust out her hand. Maud? Yes, welcome to my pour. Maud waved her in and saw Ted coming up the walk in a suit and tie. She introduced herself and led them to the dedicated pour room. Silesia talked rapidly. It's such a beautiful day. Perfect for a little tea, don't you think? Maud nodded. Ted lagged behind, taking note of the decor and the layout of the house. Silesia continued without pausing for breath. But it's so beautiful. A shame to spend it cooped up inside. I love going down to the river walk and watching the ducks and the boats and the birds flying overhead. The trees make such lovely shade, and each fluttering leaf responds to every slight breeze. Is there any way we can reschedule? I hate to waste the day inside. Once in the room, Maud indicated where they should sit. Well, you're here now. We won't be all day, bright and shadowless. The pour room had no windows. No pictures adorned the walls, which had climbing vines painted on them. A ficus tree stood in one corner. A low table sat amidst plush pillows. A table beside Maud had a gas fire, teapots, space for preparation, and teacups. Silesia and Ted did a little dance, trying to decide who should sit where. Maud pointed and said, "No, Silesia there. Ted, please sit here." They sat. Silesia giggled like a little girl. Ted's face shifted between annoyance and boredom. Maud prepared the tea with bamboo utensils and served them each a cup. She said, "This first cup should relax you. Take a moment to enjoy. Sip carefully. It's hot." Silesia downed the cup in one gulp and screamed as she spit it out. She grabbed a napkin and wiped tea off herself and the table. "Wow, sorry, that was hot." Ted rolled his eyes. The first serving of tea was intended to break the ice. Maud never wanted clients to think of their poor experience as akin to riding in an elevator. They were past that. Whatever their stated purpose, Maud sensed subtle emotional currents at work. Her blends worked to rebalance each person, regardless their emotional state. Wanting the tea to bring everyone into a state of calm, she poured them another cup. She leaned toward Silesia. "Are you okay?" "It's hot." "Hot. Right. Got the message." Silesia blew on the cup and sipped. "Oh, this is good." Maud turned to Ted. "And how are you, Ted?" Startled from his reverie, Ted took a moment. He reined in his disdain for what he thought an elaborate charade. "This is different from the expected traditional tea ceremony." "Oh, what have you heard?" "I never tell people to expect that." "Well, to start," he pointed at Silesia, "this badly dressed, classless woman is rude, won't stop talking, doesn't carry a fan." Silesia scowled and rummaged through her purse. Pulling out a battery-operated fan, she switched it on. The little propeller spun, blowing strands of her hair back. With eyes fluttering, she smiled at the breeze in her face. Giggling, she aimed it at Ted. Blocking the draft with his hands, he said, "Never mind. Turn it off. Keep it to yourself." Silesia winked at Maud and, giggling, returned the fan to her purse. Ted said, "So much for tranquility." "This is my point. How do you dare pretend this tattered facade is a tea ceremony? You exhibit only the shallowest grasp of time-honored rituals. This is just a load of frayed, New Age claptrap hiding behind the trappings of a traditional tea ceremony." "I'm sorry. My pores have been misrepresented. Would you like more tea? I mean, where's the respect, the purity, and the reverence?" Maud held her look. After a moment, he held his cup out. He wouldn't let go when Maud tried to take it. Careful not to burn him, she refilled his cup. "It's hot, I know." He gave Silesia a stern look and brushed off his leg. Maud noticed that Silesia had begun to fidget. She declined more tea. "Silesia, tell us what brings you here," she sighed. "It's all about my roommates. They aren't pets, but they're hamsters." "Well, about 6 months ago, I was feeling lonely in my beautiful, spacious apartment. So I bought a couple of friends. Hate to have to buy a friend. Seems so entitled, but can't exactly meet a hamster at the local club." Maud nodded. Ted rolled his eyes. He whispered, "Can't you shut her up?" Everything was cool for a while. We got on famously. But then one day, I came home and discovered an extra dozen of the little critters. Who knew? All in one cage? Appalled, Silesia practically shouted. "Oh, no. I would never cage my friends. What do you take me for?" Agitated, Ted said, But is right. That was only the beginning. I've lost count. And that isn't even the worst part. Neither Maud nor Ted wanted to hear the worst. I discovered that they ate one of them. Maud nodded impassively. "Yes, but nothing. I admit, I'm not that bothered that his family ate their baby brother. I mean, get real. Babies do get eaten. But poor little Jimmy. I'll never forget when I found little Jimmy was the hamster." Silesia looked at Ted like he was a lunatic. "Focus, Ted. The circle of life and all that. I miss him." "And," Maud said, "yes, I cannot get over." She dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Maud and Ted leaned in. "After everything I did, just can't believe that they ate meat." Ted feigned a coughing fit to cover his laughter. Silesia waited for it to subside. "I mean, what did I do wrong? How could they? Didn't I raise them right? You know, to be vegetarian. I thought they were. I didn't skimp in sympathy." Maud touched Silesia's right hand. She covered Maud's with her left. Maud placed her free hand on top of Silesia's. Misty-eyed, they turned to Ted. He said, "Looks like you're first at bat, Maud." They didn't understand. He said, "So, is this it? Sorry, but I have to get on with my day." Maud straightened up. "No, Ted. Now that we're in sync with each other, I'll serve another tea. One made for you alone. A special tea? Just for me?" Oh, boy. Maud resisted trying to kill Ted. She wouldn't poison him. At least, not in the usual way. "But I'm not about to let this hack destroy everything I've built." She wanted Ted's comeuppance, not his life. This potion would take his words, silence him, at least for a few days. He said, "So what's in this special tea?" "Hold the cyanide." Only he laughed. Maud said, "I can't reveal my secret recipe, but it contains a mixture of frankincense, sandalwood, ylang-ylang, rose, pepper. I could go on. You get the idea." Ted and Silesia were awed at the complexities of Maud's preparations. And Silesia, don't feel left out. I've also designed a special blend for you. They sat expectantly. Maud poured Ted's tea from a pot she'd set aside and handed him the small porcelain cup. He reached out, but stopped. Putting his hand up, he shook his head. No thanks. The cup is chipped. I'll pass. Maud recovered. You don't understand, Ted. It's not a chip. Only an irregularity in the glaze. These rare cups are highly prized, eagerly sought for. Ted couldn't care less. Silesia watched, fascinated. Maud continued. You've heard of the Japanese tradition of mending a broken bowl with a vein of gold lining the crack? This is similar, Silesia said. Oh, don't waste it. Give it to me. She reached out, but it wasn't made for you. It's Ted's. Don't worry. I'll manage. It sounds delicious. This had never happened before. And this tea was pivotal to Maud's plan. She said, if you insist. Ted said, we all do. Silesia took Ted's cup, sipped, and smiled. Beginning to speak, she stopped and could only say, more? Not used to losing control? Maud refreshed Silesia's cup. Ted smiled at Silesia. Ah, miss, the power of the well-chosen word. Silesia nodded, but could say nothing. Ted turned to Maud and said, good, you shut her up. At last. I'll have some too, Maud said. Yes, you need something. I can't have you go thirsty. Deftly switching pots, she poured him a cup of calming tea. They each smiled as he took the cup. He raised it in a mock toast and sipped. Wow, that's delicious. He loosened his tie. Maybe you sensed this, Maud, with your acute observational powers. I need to tell you. I write a column at the paper. Commentary, reviews, opinions on the world at large. He leaned forward and took Maud's hand. I am happy to say you've earned yourself a glowing review, Maud replied. Ted, you? A writer? I had no idea. She refilled his cup with tea, promoting a positive attitude. Go with the flow, she thought. Silesia remained silent. Ted waxed poetic. Tranquility reigned, a willow of weeps. Her bones were brittle, but not from age. These days, it was a workout in itself to wipe the counters clean, and had even become hard to pick up the unused dishes she'd find on the table at the end of the day. The ceramic was too heavy for her frail hands. She set a place at the table for each of her children, complete with her finest china and silverware in the proper way. But, she supposed, her children had better things to do than come eat with their poor mother. She didn't mind, seeing as she only wanted them to be happy. And so the table was continuously set and continuously taken apart, but never a drop of food to clean up, as the cycle repeated itself over and over again. Every day she made the bed in the guest room, which no one ever used, and the beds in her daughter and son's room. She never made her own. because she was afraid of encouraging bed bugs in the tightly packed sheets. The days went by in a blur, and how could they not when she was biding her time, cleaning off the same shelves, bedside tables, and book covers she did the day before? For a house with very little movement, there sure seemed to be a lot that needed to be done. So there she was, perched on a wooden stool at the granite countertop, scraping at some invisible speck of dirt. She hummed to herself, softly rocking back and forth. It was hard to tell when she had last eaten, but her shaky hands shed some light on the matter. She grasped the silver knife in her hand and then let it drop, a resounding clink following suit. "Oh, Charlie boy, how I love you," she cooed. "Oh, Lisa darling, how I adore you." She went on and on, singing them praises with a tired smile on her face. She hummed a tune in the still air. "Pick me a pear from that tree outside. Hand me a willow of weeps. Kiss all my tears away, darling, while I send you to somber sleep." Only when she heard no reply did she start up again. "Take me to dance, and we'll sing along the lonesome tune of the night. Lend me your ear, and I'll make a song to sing you. Goodbye, goodbye." The fire beckoned, so she willed her legs up off the stool, grounding her feet on the cool tiles of the kitchen floor. She made her way to the little carpet beside the hearth, humming all the while. The rug beneath her was cold and stiff, a mass of black and white fibers, all woven together. Once the fire was stoked, she huddled her knees to her chest and resumed that gentle rocking back and forth. She picked up a pretty little jar by her side, lazily examining the carvings engraved on the stone. Swirls and swooshes of wind alongside a small wilting chrysanthemum, delicately designed. She traced the carvings with her thin, brittle finger. Then she opened the jar. She reached 2 fingers into the opening and took a small pinch of the contents. With a delicate flick, she sent the ashes into the heat. She watched, mesmerized, as the fire grew and died, grew and died, with each pinch of ashes. She found herself smiling, humming that tune that kept on a loop in her mind. "Oh, Charlie boy, how I love you," she cooed once more, sending some ashes into the fire. "Oh, Lisa darling, how I adore you." Then she took the jar, perched dangerously close to the flames, and sent the rest of the ashes down into the coal. The fire roared in gratitude and grew bigger still, and all the while her heart beat with a sad, sad rhythm as she kept that absent smile on her lips. Then, to her horror, she heard footsteps, loud, panicked footsteps, making their way down the stairs in the hallway. So close they were, she was sent into such a state of panic that she dropped the jar onto the floor, its ceramic shell breaking upon contact into hundreds of tiny shards. she let out a scream. "Oh, Charlie boy, how I love you," she sobbed, huddling against herself, rocking furiously. "Oh, Lisa, darling, how I adore you." She sobbed and wailed until she thought she couldn't anymore. And even then, it continued. An endless flow of tears. She let out another scream as she felt two sturdy hands on her shoulders. "Oh, Charlie boy, is that you?" she wailed, rocking harder. "Mrs. Jamie, it's time for your medicine, darling." Another shriek, the words sending her into an episode. "Oh, Lisa, darling. Oh, Lisa, darling. Where are you, Lisa, darling?" She began slamming her hands into her knees and rocking so hard forward that she sent her whole frail body toppling onto the ground. "Mrs. Jamie, it's me. Randy, I'm your nurse. I'm here now. Everything is okay now," she wailed some more. Because, of course, everything wasn't okay. "Charlie boy, Lisa darling, help me." And then she surrendered to Randy's strong grasp, wailing still, as he took her upstairs to her bedroom. She was so worked up that she could barely see, her eyes welling with every thought of that fire. Those ashes. She kicked and flailed as she was firmly placed into bed, tucked in tight for all the bed bugs to see. "Mrs. Jamie, it's okay," Randy said softly, stroking her hair as he fed her various pills and a glass of water. "I'm here now. You're safe. I will keep you safe." She looked up at him with big, innocent eyes. Just like that, she had already forgotten the panic she was in moments ago. She resumed the gentle rocking as her frail hands clutched the sheets. "Charlie," she murmured. "Lisa, they're safe too, now. They're not in pain anymore. Hush now, dear. It's about time you went down for a nap, huh? A deer, a sign, and a tree prologue." The buck emerged from the line of pine trees, sniffed the warm fall air for any danger. He then strode across the mist-covered, grassy field, eyeing the weeds growing along the fence line. As he chomped on the weeds and grasses that grew along the wire fence next to the road, it failed to notice the timber rattlesnake that had been resting in the weeds as well. When the buck's hoof stepped on the rattler, the snake struck out and bit the leg. Once and again, the buck reared back and kicked at the snake. The buck then began to walk away, but only made it a few steps before the poison took effect. Its legs became stiffer, then stopped moving altogether. As the buck heart stopped, the buck tripped into the fence, knocking over one of the fence posts and a good portion of the fence as well. Attached to the fence post had been a no trespassing sign. The road Beatty Ave, next to the field, was rarely used, so the buck simply decomposed into the ground. Life carries on. 2 years would pass, and the buck had all but disappeared when David drove his delivery van down Beatty Ave. His mind was not on work, but on the loss of his wife and mother of their 3 boys, just a few months prior. Now working 2 jobs to keep the boys in the same house until the insurance company paid him what he was due. David looked at the row of Christmas trees in the field across the road. Like a tsunami, dread flooded his brain. This would be the first Christmas without Kathy. David had been dreading this time. Everyone told him the boys were young and would be fine. He would have to make a list of things to buy the boys over the next couple of months, decorate the house. Would he have to make cookies, as Kathy did with the boys? Or maybe he could ask his mother or mother-in-law to help. They were both always offering help in any way. His mind filled with thoughts of Christmas. He missed the turn off Beatty Ave to where the packages he needed to deliver. Cursing himself, he had to drive an additional 2 miles to find a driveway to turn around in and get back en route. Stay awake and pay attention, old boy. The last thing you need is to get into an accident, he said aloud to himself. David made his delivery and took his time walking back to his truck, taking deep breaths of the cool country air to clear his head. Putting his seatbelt on, he made the decision to call the grandmothers, and hard as it may be, ask for their help. He felt good after coming to this decision. With their help, it would be a good Christmas for the boys and himself. Driving back down Beatty Ave, he let his eyes wander over the row of pine trees again. This time, no tsunami of dread, but one of happiness. He slowed his truck to a stop when he saw a cardinal bouncing from limb to limb on one tree. David's mind seemed to relax for the first time since Kathy's death. After completing his deliveries, David returned home and immediately called his mother and then Kathy's mother. Both were thrilled to help. Over the next 2 months, the mothers talked to each other and made a schedule of when cookies would be baked and the tree put up. The boys were very excited to be spending time with the grandparents. Both grandfathers, after finding out what was going on, joined in. It was building up to be a good Christmas. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, David loaded the boys in a truck he had borrowed from his brother and headed out. After 20 minutes of dancing around questions from the boy about where they were going, why did they need Uncle Jack's truck? David pulled over to the side of road next to the field of Christmas trees. "What are we doing here?" asked the oldest, Tommy. "Well, I think we need a tree, don't we?" David asked with a big smile on his face. All 3 boys looked out the window at the field of trees and began to cheer. Chad, the youngest, began making chopping motions with his hands. "Can I cut first?" he asked with a huge smile pinned to his face. "Here's the plan." David told his boys, "I was thinking we'd dig up the tree and bring it back home. Then, after Christmas, we can plant it in the backyard. What do you think?" "Mommy always loved Christmas trees," Chad said, still holding the smile on his face. But tears were gathering in his eyes. David could feel the mood in the truck change with Chad's statement. He inadvertently popped the happy ballon. He had to say something to bring joy and happiness back. "Yes," she did. "That is why I thought we could bring one home and keep it all year in the backyard," he said quickly, hoping this would help. Bill, the middle child, broke the silence when he pointed to the largest tree and announced they should bring that one home. The other two boys cheered in agreement. "I love your idea." All David could get out before the boys were out of the truck and running across the field towards the large tree. David chuckled to himself and went to the back to pull out the shovels and wheelbarrow, then followed the boys through the field. The boys were basically dancing around the tree they had chosen, even though it was at least 12 feet tall and wider than Uncle Jack's pickup. Boys, boys. David had to call several times to get their attention. "That tree is way too tall to even fit into the truck, let alone in the house. We can just trim some off the bottom to make it fit," Tommy said, looking up and down the tree. "Even if we could make it fit, there is no way the four of us can carry it to the truck." "Buddy, I was thinking of this one." David pointed to the tree he had seen the cardinal in a few months ago. "It's kind of small," Chad announced, looking from the large tree to the smaller one his dad was standing next to. "Yeah, Dad, Chad is nearly as tall as that one," Tommy added. "We can put it on a table in the living room," Dived improvised. "Plus, digging this one out is going to hard enough." Tommy shook his head, then clapped his brothers on the shoulders. David geared himself up for a fight with Tommy. Since Kathy's death, Tommy seems to have decided he was suddenly a man and didn't need to be told anything by his father. "Come on, guys. Dad's right, that one will be easier to dig up and carry to the truck," Tommy said, shocking his father. The boys and their day spent the next hour digging and pulling on the tree to free it from its grasp on terra firma. Moving to the new tree to and into the truck took an additional 15 minutes. On their way home, they stopped by a gardening center to get new soil and a large yellow planter. Yellow was their mom's favorite color. While shopping, Chad explained to the salesperson the pot was to put their mother in for Christmas, and then put her in the backyard. David had to quickly explain exactly what they were doing. The salesperson smiled and laughed and stated she understood. When they arrived home, David and the boys moved the tree to the edge of the truck edge. They removed burlap they had wrapped around the roots. David instructed them to pull off the earth from the roots before they put it into the new pot. He then went inside to clean up and start making dinner. David had just started browning the meat when Tommy ran inside. "Dad! Dad, Dad!" he called, running into the kitchen. David pulled the pan off the burner and looked at his son. "Look what we found on the tree." Tommy had 3 small whitish objects in his hand. "What are those?" David asked, whipping his hand on his shirt, then picking up one of the objects. "Looks like a stone, but didn't feel as heavy as it should have. I think they're finger bones," Tommy said, with a serious, straight face. "You see, the bigger one goes right here on your fingers." Tommy placed the longer of the bones on his finger between the first and second knuckle. "Well, Dr. Leet, you may be right," David said, with a little more concern in his voice than he meant to. "How many did you find?" "Just these 3, Tommy replied. "Tommy, we found some more funny stones," screamed Bill from the garage. David grabbed the remaining bones from Tommy's hand and put them on the kitchen counter, then pushed Tommy towards the garage. Once back in the garage, standing at the back of the truck, Chad was holding a hand full of bones that looked just like the ones Tommy had brought him. "Okay, boys," David said, looking outside the garage to see if anyone had heard Bill screaming his announcement. Not seeing anyone, he ushered the boys inside. "Let's get washed up for dinner now." "But Dad, we're not done yet," Chad mentioned as he pulled another clod of dirt off the root ball. David paused. "It will be easier once the dirt is all dried out." During dinner, David was quiet as the boys chatted endlessly while eating tacos. Halfway through dinner, David excused himself and took his cell phone into the living room. When he came back into the kitchen, he addressed the boys. "Guys?" David started, then took a deep breath before continuing. "Don't be." David's mind went blank. He wasn't sure how to continue. "What the matter, Dad?" Tommy asked through a mouthful of tacos. "No easy way to say this." David bravely started, then immediately faltered, looking in the faces of his sons. "Okay, here it is. The special rocks you found today, cleaning out the roots of the tree. I think they are bones from fingers." Tommy, who had made the discovery, was not surprised. Bill looked at his fingers as if the bones might be his own. Chad took advantage of everyone else being occupied and grabbed the last taco. 20 minutes later, a police cruiser, followed by an unmarked police car, pulled into the driveway. Over the next hour, the 2 police officers examined the root ball, while a crime scene detective collected the found bones and searched the roots for more. The detective had taken David into the living room to speak to him. Tommy, Bill, and Chad stood in the driveway and watched the police working. David came out a short time later and, without speaking to the boys, walked over to the neighbor's house and returned with the neighbor, Mrs. Atwell. "Boys, I need to go with the detective, and I'll be back. Until Mrs. Atwell is going to watch over you. I want you on your best behavior until I get back." Bill was the only one who responded. "Okay, you be good too," which brought a smile to David's face. The police finished collecting the bones and searching for the tree ball. They took the 2 shovels used by the family to dig up the tree, and then they left. It was after dark before David returned and collected his children and took them home. Over a pizza dinner, he told them he had taken the detective to the field where they dug up the tree. He explained that they had sort of illegally took the tree, but the detective said not to worry about it, and we could keep the tree. The two younger boys cheered. 3 days later, the detective called David back and explained they had found a complete skeleton in the hole they had removed the tree from. A forensic anthropology team responded and determined the body had been buried between 50 and 60 years ago. David expressed his thanks to the detective and said he would think about how to break it to his sons. David heard the detective take a deep breath, then explained he will have to do it sooner than later. While on site, the detectives found 7 more bodies buried under tress in the field. The field used to belong to a notorious mafia associate. The detective believed the bodies in the field were victims of mob hits. The news has already caught wind of the story, so they may be showing up for interview with the man who broke so many open homicide cases. Now it was David's turn to take a deep breath. He thought of Kathy and smiled to himself. She always had a way of making him forget bad things. Forever Christmas. Roscoe, get off. Get off me. Get off, you crazy pup. My mangy mutt wakens me with a slobbery good morning before getting in a round of zoomies. I love him, but I'd also like to murder him. Before I do, though, I should really brush his teeth, I think, as I wipe off the sticky goop on my cheek. Hey, hun, are you awake? Lorraine, my wife, pops her head in the door, a festive robe tied around her. Wait, it's Christmas, covered in dog slobber. You forget to shut the door? I chuckle. Oops. She smiles back, the same one I fell in love with 11 years ago. I'd been a bit cynical about the whole true love thing in my youth. And then Lorraine bashed down all resistance with one glance. Can you watch the kids for a sec? They're already going crazy, waiting to open presents, she says. They're not the only ones, I reply. Then, lowering my voice so as not to ruin the magic that is an old man slithering his way down your chimney, I can't wait to see the look on Nick's face when he unwraps the falcon. Lorraine slides over to me and kisses me. Merry Christmas, baby, she whispers in my ear. It brings an overwhelming sense of comfort, but somewhere in me, I feel an unusual pang of despair. She slaps my butt and tells me to get up. The feeling retreats as I roll out of bed and throw on some loungers, excited to rile up Nick and Lily. I stomp my way downstairs. Ho! 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 Merry Christmas, I say, giving my best Kris Kringle impression. Daddy! They both scream out, their mother's smile plastered across their face. Look under the tree, shouts Nick. Daddy, Santa ate all our cookies, counters Lily. We'd spent yesterday designing and baking gingerbread cookies for Santa. It is Lily's favorite. Since she was 3, We'd all designed a dozen gingerbread cookies, 5 of which were subsequently judged to be the plate cookies by Lily. She would walk confidently around each tray, carefully inspecting each cookie, letting out a scientific every now and then, before carefully selecting a cookie from each tray. One tray would have 2 cookies selected from it, upon which Lily would congratulate that person as the winner. Did he, Lil? I pick her up and place her on my shoulders and skip into the kitchen to check myself. Well, would you look at that? The man didn't leave a crumb behind. After wrapping all of the gifts, Lorraine and I always share a glass of wine and share the plate cookies. Lorraine, cookie in mouth, glass in hand, walks around to inspect my wrapping, criticizing my bungled tape job. Well, we'll just tell the kids that Santa had the elves in the training work on these ones, she teases. Oh, come on. I've gotten so much better. Look at that one in the center. It's pristine, I say. Honey, that one is mine. She kisses me on the cheek and curls up on the corner of the couch with me after snagging the last cookie from the tray. I was gonna have that, I say. Cookies are for those who can wrap. Sorry. You better give me that cookie right now, I say. Lorraine gives me a side eye before taking another bite. I wrap my arm over her shoulder and try to grab it out of her mouth. But she dodges me and scooches her way to the other end of the couch. Don't you take one more bite? She moves it slowly toward her mouth, opening wide. I grab her ankle and pull her toward me. Lorraine erupts with a giggle, still managing to hold the cookie out of my reach. I grab her arm and crawl toward her until I can pin her arm down and lean over to take a bite of the cookie while it's still in her hand. Thank you, babe. I lean down and take another bite. Fine, you can have it. Just let me go. I grab it from her and retreat to my side of the couch, making a show of eating the cookie, smacking my lips and swishing it down with a swig of wine. Lorraine kicks at my legs, smirks, finishes her glass of wine, and leans back into me. The house is silent. The kids long asleep. Wind sweeps gently outside as snow continues to fall, as it has throughout the day. Stockings hang above the lit fireplace. Cane-shaped M&Ms, paint sticks, and Hot Wheels cozied up inside, waiting to be spilled across the floor tomorrow before being tossed aside for the next gift. Roscoe huffs in the corner, clearly displeased that we're up past his bedtime. Lorraine and I stay wrapped around each other, enjoying the silence that is so rare during the holiday season, and doze off until we awake sometime in the middle of the night and mosey to bed. The peace and warmth I felt last night feel so much more distant, and I get an urge to hold my wife. Lily is still staring in amazement at the empty plate. Something about it looks off. The red is no longer a merry holiday red, rather a crimson blood that paints Santa's sleigh and dyes his bag of presents. The plate clatters to the floor, Roscoe jumping in fright, bumping into Lily and knocking her to the floor. Lily starts to cry out as Lorraine pops into the kitchen behind me. "Hey, sweetie, did Daddy drop the cookie platter?" she says, sweeping Lily up in her arms. "Are you okay?" she asks me. I realize I've been standing frozen, my mind empty, frigid. I shake it off. "Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Lil. I didn't mean to scare you," I say, planting a kiss on her and then Lorraine. "Why don't we open presents?" I say. That elicits a roar from Nick in the other room, and Lily surges back, wiping her tears away. "Now, before we open presents, you all know the drill." I set up the tripod, and we all huddle in front of the tree, the kids wrangling in Roscoe. "We crushed it again, gang," I cheer, the stored image coming through my live eye, projecting the family photo through my retina. I quickly flick through the Christmas album, looking at the years past. 2 years ago, poor Roscoe was stuck with a cone on his head. 5 years ago was Lily's first Christmas. 7 was Nick's. 11 years ago was our first Christmas married in this house, before we adopted Roscoe later that year. Scrolling through now, the same wish every father has hits me. Please don't grow up. The thought causes a pain to ripple through me, erupting in a powerful headache. "David, are you okay?" my wife asks. I click out of the Live Eye screen, turn and face my family, but they're blurry. Hazy may be a more appropriate word for it. Like a memory faded over time, I reset the device and close my eyes. My heart is pumping. My head aches. Something about this moment feels off. A thought beats at the back of my head, but like a weighted box, it refuses to rise to the surface. By the revulsion coursing through my body, I'm not sure I want to know what's inside. The device resets, and I open my eyes. I exhale. The beating in my head subsides. Lorraine wraps her arm around me, no longer in a haze. "Sorry, I just got the worst migraine. Things went blurry for a second," I admit. "There's some aspirin in the kitchen. I'll get you some," she says. "No, it's okay. It's gone." My Live Eye may have glitched. I grab her arm and pull her back in toward me. "Okay, what are we waiting for? Let's open these presents." The day flashes by in a flurry of ripped up shreds of candy cane and elf-decorated wrapping paper, cut plastic ties that restrain action figures in their boxes, and chocolate-greased candy wrappers as the kids fuel their excitement with sugar trips. Lorraine works at preparing a late Christmas lunch, Roscoe providing assistance, mopping up the floor. I spend the morning putting together race car tracks, helping Lily begin her Lego dollhouse foundation, and clearing the mess of my critized wrappings that inevitably cover the floor in pieces. "Dad, "I want to fly the drone," says Nick. The highlight of my morning was watching Nick unwrap the gift he'd been talking about all year, a Falcon 1 safety drone. It was a beginner drone with limited flight range and capabilities, designed to spark kids' interest in flying and racing. Parental controls enabled limitations on range, so we could limit flying to just our backyard and at a relative minimum altitude. I already planned on breaking those rules, but for his mother's sake, they provided assurance that he wouldn't crash into the neighbor's window. Fair. I know, buddy, but it's missing a part. We'll have to go to the store. I help Lorraine set the dining room table, my stomach growling at the aromas drifting in from the kitchen. I can't help but feel like I haven't smelled a home-cooked meal in some time, and I almost get emotional when Lorraine sets the ham down in the center. This isn't my life. This life is filled with love and hope, like the Hallmark holiday movie that plays in the background. Something rattles internally. The box, weighted down, chains jangling, screaming to break free. I swear I hear whispers, someone calling my name, penciling. "I can take you tomorrow. I need to pick up your sister's glasses. But we have to go early. David, you're still good to meet with the guy coming to take a look at the leak tomorrow, right?" asks Lorraine. Sorry, I ask, startled back into the moment. "The leak. You can stay here while I take the kids tomorrow morning. We need to get it fixed before Aunt Janie comes to visit." "Oh, yes, sorry. I'll be here, don't worry," I say. She gives me a look of concern, and I get a feeling again, like this moment is almost right, but not quite. As if someone shoved a couple of pieces of a different puzzle into this one, so that from a distance it looks correct, but up close it's clear the image is tainted. I down a couple of glasses of wine as we dig into the feast, which seems to ease the lingering tension inside me. The rest of the day is spent in a shower of giggles and roarous cries, spending the night ramping Hot Wheels with Nick and drawing pictures with Lily. We cap off the night with a board game frenzy. Nick wins twice at Candyland. Lorraine and Lily team up to take Nick and I down at Scrabble Jr., and I win. Sorry. I feel as if I've won an Olympic medal when my final piece lands home. There's a crack in the board across the word, imitating my own feelings. Looking at it causes the box to rattle more violently, and I'm relieved when Lorraine tells the kids it's bedtime. I stay downstairs while Lorraine gets the kids into bed. Christmas Stories for Kids lays on the coffee table. The night was supposed to end with me reading it to the kids before slowly backing out of the room, exhausted from the day, but overwhelmed with the sense of comfort and security only family can provide. It ended with me crawling into bed with Lorraine, already sound asleep. It ended with a sorry board in pristine condition, a puzzle appropriately assembled, Tonight, however, it ends with me falling asleep on the couch. Roscoe, get off. Get off me. Get off, you crazy pup. Roscoe's covered me in droll again. I must have made my way up to bed in a sleepy stupor last night. Hey, hun, are you awake? I glimpse Lorraine's festive robe. It's Christmas. A crippling pain erupts in the center of my head. Whatever weighted down my box shakes free with the eruption, and it begins to rise to the surface. I'm scared of what's inside. It remains closed, the pain increasing as it continues to rise. Whatever's inside is shaking, begging to escape. It knows that this reality is wrong, tainted. The rogue puzzle pieces pop out, disgusted in their attempt to disguise what is real. The box shakes with such violence now that I swear it jostles my own body. David, can you hear me? Let's get a... The voice trails off, but the hand attached to it touches my arm, and it's only then I realize it is my body shaking. I'm trapped between two realities, but my mind refuses to accept either. The box is almost to the surface, and it's now I realize it contains death. I plead for it to remain unopened. I feel a pinch in my arm, a physical pain barely perceptible in the mental torture about to be unlocked. Then, a warmth starts to spread, outward from the pinch, up my arm, and through my chest. It makes it to my head just in time to weigh the box back down once more. I'm trapped in limbo. One direction tortures me with what was. Another tortures me with what is. Time passes. Voices fade in and out. Appreciate you accommodating us on short notice and during the holiday. Yes, well, it's been disturbing how many cases are turning up. Anything we can do to help you combat it, we're happy to help. This is him? Yes, David Groggins, age 43. Police found him unconscious in Reynoldsville 3 weeks ago. Medical tested him then. He consumed it? Yes. Tropodiazolethol was found in his system. Heard they're calling it glitch on the streets. Is that right? Glitch, bug, defect, crash. It seems to only have found its way into methamphetamines at the moment, and we hope to keep it contained. Easier to track one drug supply over many. I read his file. History of drug abuse ever since his family died in a car crash. Day after Christmas, no less. Well, if your reports are accurate, it certainly helps us understand this drug's intent a bit more. Yes, additional testing is needed, but we're 90% sure he's been reliving the day before the crash. Christmas Day, 4 years ago tomorrow. We are not quite sure how it works. The drug causes a malfunction in the Livi system, essentially trapping a person in a continuous memory loop. We suspect it may attach itself to particularly powerful memories. Like in this case, though we cannot confirm at this time, we were able to perform an autopsy on one victim a week ago. Damage to the hippocampus and frontal lobe were observed. Preliminary reports suggest those affected might know they're trapped in a memory, that they may experience what may be described as glitches throughout the memory itself. For this man's sake, I hope he doesn't know. Tomorrow's Christmas. Let him have Christmas with his family again. Dial tone. Dear Jess, Tijuana, Mexico. Pay phone. Outside Mercado El Popo, 1999. Sound of coins clinking, dialing tones. Aló? ¿Quién habla? Myra. Es Leah? Leah! Dios mío! I can't believe it's you. We've been going crazy here. Your mother comes to my house every day asking if I've heard from you. Where are you? Are you okay? I made it to Tijuana. I'm at a payphone near the market. The phone keeps eating my coins, so I don't have much time. You sound different. Your voice. You sound sick. Are you sick? I'm not sick, Myra. Just tired. So tired. Remember how we used to stay up all night studying for Senora Martinez's chemistry exams? This is different. I haven't really slept in days. Days? Leah, you're scaring me. Everything is scary here. Remember how we used to talk about leaving Venezuela? Making plans in your backyard? Drinking your mother's terrible café con leche? Sound of traffic passing, horns honking. Of course I remember. We were going to be roommates in Miami, get jobs at fancy hotels, maybe even meet Ricky Martin. We had everything figured out. We were so naive, Mayre. So stupid. We thought it would be like the movies. Save some money, buy a plane ticket, start a new life. But the visas, they kept rejecting us. And now you're with the coyotes. Leah, everyone here knows someone who didn't make it. Please come home. Home to what? The markets are empty, Mayra. The hospitals have no medicine. Remember when my little brother got dengue last year? Mama had to trade her wedding ring for antibiotics. I can't watch my family live like that anymore. Warning beep from the phone. Hold on. Need to add more coins. Sound of coins dropping. Myra, I have to tell someone. I can't keep carrying this alone. Tell me what? What happened? The group I'm with. There was this girl. My age, maybe younger. From Guatemala. The coyotes, they made her carry drugs. Inside her body. Little packets, like grapes. She cried all night before they made her swallow them. Dios mío, that's not even the worst part. There was this woman with us, from El Salvador, in her 50s with grandchildren in Los Angeles. She showed us their pictures the first night. She couldn't keep up in the desert. Her legs just gave out. Leah, we left her there, Mayra. under a cactus. She begged us not to go. She promised she'd rest just for an hour, then catch up. I told them I would stay with her. I couldn't bear the thought of leaving her alone, but she grabbed my arm, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "No, mi hija, one death is enough." She made me promise to go. She made me do it. Sound of crying, voice breaking. I had to go, Mère. I had no option. I had no option. I had to run to catch up with the group. I could hear her praying behind me, her voice getting fainter and fainter. We tried crossing that same night, but there was a massive drug bust happening near the crossing point. Cartel activity. Border patrol everywhere. Helicopters with searchlights. The coyotes said it was too hot, too risky. We had to turn back. Now we're stuck here in Tijuana, waiting to try again. And all I can think about is how we left her there, alone, with just those pictures of her grandchildren, sounds of street vendors calling out in Spanish. I can barely carry my own jacket now. It weighs more than all our school books combined. Remember how we used to complain about those heavy books? Bitter laugh. What I wouldn't give to be back in that classroom now. You can come back. Please, it's not too late. It is. There's no going back. The desert, it changes you, changes everything. I see things at night when we're trying to sleep. Shadows moving. Sometimes I think it's the border patrol. Sometimes something worse. The coyotes watch us constantly. One girl tried to run away last week. They caught her. She came back with bruises. She wouldn't explain. Background chatter in Spanish, English, and indigenous languages. Last night, we tried crossing through the river. Everyone said it would be safer than the desert. But there were farmers on the cliffs above the river. Farmers with rifles, Myra. They didn't shout warnings, didn't tell us to go back. They just started shooting. The water, voice breaking. The water turned red. People were screaming, trying to swim back. But the current was so strong. We had to stay underwater, holding our breath, praying they wouldn't see us. A mother lost grip of her baby's hand. I can still hear her screaming, "Por Dios, Leah." Some people just disappeared under the water, never came back up. The farmers just stood there, watching, like they were hunting animals, not watching people die. Human beings, parents, children, dreams. Warning beep from the phone. I keep thinking about what Papa used to say before he died, about America being the land of opportunity. But he never knew about this part. The nightmare you have to survive to reach those opportunities. If they catch me, I've heard stories about the detention centers, but I can't go back, Mayra. There's nothing left in Venezuela. There's your family. There's me. We love you. Love doesn't fill empty stomachs. Can't buy medicine. Can't build a future. The inflation. It's worse now than when I left. My mother's entire month's salary can barely buy a week's groceries. I have to make it, Mayra. I have to. Sound of more coins being inserted. You know what I think about most? Those stupid telenovelas we used to watch after school. Remember how we'd laugh at how dramatic they were? Now I understand. Real life, real desperation. It's more dramatic than any telenovela. Leah, please. You're trembling. I can hear it in your voice. I am. I'm scared all the time. But I'm also angry. Angry that this is what it takes. That we have to risk our lives just for a chance at a decent life. That farmers with rifles get to decide who lives and who dies. Distant police sirens. The coyotes are signaling. We're moving again tonight. Mayra, if something happens to me. No, don't you dare say goodbye. Listen to me. If something happens, tell my mother I understand now. Why she cried when she found out I was leaving. Tell her I'm sorry for the pain I'm causing her, but not for trying. Tell her what she always told us. La esperanza es lo último que se pierde. Hope is the last thing we lose. Leah, please, and Mayra. That night before I left, when we stayed up planning our future, those dreams we shared, keep them. Maybe not Miami, maybe not the fancy hotel jobs, but something better than this. Promise me you'll keep hoping. I promise. But you have to promise to stay alive. I'll try. I have to go. They're waiting. Don't forget me, okay? Never. Leah, wait. Te quiero, Mayre. Maybe next time. Maybe I'll call you from the other side. Sound of coins running out, followed by the click of the phone being hung up. Then a dial tone. The cabin in the cave. The sun began to fade behind the gray, overcast plateau that Ethan was hunting on. And darkness began to take over the lonely Mesa de Blanco wilderness once more. It wasn't long ago when the already threatening sky had turned an angry, boiling, black color, and it had begun to rain down hectic sheets of bitter snowflakes and tiny shards of stinging ice. He squinted furiously around him, looking for any sign of the animal he was currently hunting. He had found some spore of the massive beast a little way back, and was a little surprised when he found out that the trail seemed to lead directly to the snow line of Mount Blanco, and then seemed to wind about the trees in the sparse forested areas. He knew its lair had to be nearby. Most people would have called the wilderness around the White Mesa beautiful, or serene, or perhaps breathtaking. But right now, in this bitter cold, he thought that maybe stark, bone-chilling, or bleak would better describe it. Ethan had seen this particular plot of God's good earth many times before, had wandered its trails, climbed its cliffs, waded its streams, and stalked its woods. It was referred to affectionately by most of the people in Ethan's profession as Greenhorn's Grave. It had been many years since he had been in this part of the Southwest, and for good reason. The game was sparse, and the land was inhospitable. The local townsfolk of Mesa Pueblo had sought out Ethan the last time he was at the local trading post selling his furs, and had told him of how, for the last 3.5 weeks, they have been tormented by a gigantic ghost cat, and that if there is anything he should not do, it would be to go out at night. Apparently, not soon after the last full moon, the livestock around the sleepy village of Mesa Pueblo started going missing. Large livestock. There were holes ripped through fences, and large tufts of white fur caught sticking to barbed wire, but no bodies were left behind. People started seeing the phantom cat ghosting about outside of town, and swore that it had glittering pink eyes. It loved killing livestock, but within a week, it had started targeting children. Any poor child wandering too far away was very liable to be snatched up, especially during night hours. There was very little blood. Apparently, the giant wildcat was taking all of this food back to its lair to eat the majority of it, and leaving nothing behind. It was the largest animal any of the people had ever seen, even larger than a grizzly in size, but only short glimpses had ever been seen of it so far. There was no noise made when it attacked, not even from its victims. The majority of the people of Mesa Pueblo were elderly and children, with scarcely a man between 15 to 50. They said they would like to buy Ethan's services and have him hunt down the giant ghost cat. The prospect of hunting this dangerous and legendary game, albeit in the unforgiving Mesa de Blanco region, intrigued Ethan. And to think of what price the pelt would sell for when the deed was done. It seemed like a profitable situation, but only a fool jumps headlong into the dark. So he quickly went about gathering more information about this incredible beast. Most people were too scared to say anything useful. But a boy on a ranch on the eastern outskirts of town said he saw it, and could even draw how big it was. Ethan watched in stunned silence as the boy pulled out a piece of charcoal and started making long, hard lines along the wall of one of the outer barns. When the boy was done drawing, he wiped his brow and stepped back to admire his work. On the peeling barn wall was the outline of an enormous cougar, and the height of its shoulder went above Ethan's head. The kid wasn't a bad artist, Ethan had to admit, but the thing was way too big. Really, kid? You must be joking. That's bigger than a bear. The kid emphatically shook his head in the negative. then threw his hand toward the wall to emphasize his work. "Grande fantasma gatto, espiritu gatto," the boy exclaimed. But when Ethan shook his head, the boy sighed dramatically in exasperation, and then grabbed the cuff of his jacket and led him to the other side of the barn. There is where he saw the paw print the enormous cougar had left behind in the mud. Ethan's foot easily fit in it. Ethan was no small man. When Ethan returned to Trading Post, a few eager locals looked up hopefully, wondering if he would take the job. "I'm going to need an advance," stated Ethan. He was going to use some of the advance to upgrade his old equipment. Ethan's current arms didn't have enough power to do the job, and they also had distinctive quirks that made firing them extremely dangerous in life or death situations. If he was going to do the job, he was going to do it right. A few minutes later, after meeting with the elder chief and obtaining the advance, Ethan was at the local gun shop. Ol' Bessie was an aging scattergun, well beyond her years of useful service. She was traded for the largest caliber rifle they had, a Winchester Model 1886, chambered to fire a .50 caliber buffalo killing round. It held 9 rounds in a rotating clip, and he was sure it would be able to put out the firepower he would need to put it down. If not with one shot, maybe 2. The gun shop owner wouldn't even hardly look at the worn Colt Patterson he was carrying. Cap and ball were frowned upon these days. So he decided to keep the old .36 caliber as another backup. When Ethan started haggling over the price of the Colt 45 Single Action Army 45 SAA, the shopkeeper just put her hands meaningfully around his hands, which were still holding the gun, and said, "Tu mantienes," Ethan grunted in response. "Fine, but I'm just borrowing it. Do you have bullets?" "Oh, and gunpowder." An hour or so later, and Ethan had found lodgings at a homestead around the west side of town, in the area where most of the sightings happened, and at a place which had been devastated by the ghost cat. Grandma Theodora Eckets ran a pretty decent operation, breeding horses. Her business had recently come crashing down when Phantasmagoto had started hauling off her male studding stallions in the middle of the night. Now she only had a couple of foals and a mare or 2 to her name. Her work hands and her daughter wouldn't leave her, however. They said they never would, no matter how bad it got. The ranch was their life. Grandma Eckets wasn't complaining. In fact, she was in a cheery mood since she found out Ethan was going to be staying with them, because she had another person to cook for. She at once proclaimed Ethan too skinny, and went about filling his plate with all sorts of tender meats, all seasoned perfectly and cooked to perfection. Ethan had excused himself after dinner and went out back to sight in his weapons. He placed several cans and bottles on various posts around the main barn area and then cut a circle in the side of the barn itself to serve as some basic targets. The trapper smiled to himself as he began to twirl the .45 Colt SAA around his right index finger. Then he twirled it a little faster. Then he switched hands and continued to twirl with his left, all in one fluid motion. Then suddenly, the gun ceased moving and the barrel aimed directly at the nearest bottle. Ethan fired from the hip, and the bullet cored into the fence post below the target bottle. He fired again, and it went wide. On the third shot, the bottle exploded. Ethan finished with a last twirl and replaced the SAA in its shiny new hip holster, all in one smooth movement. Clapping could be heard from behind him, and then a low whistle. Ethan turned to see Grandma Eckett's beautiful daughter, Christina, standing there, hands on her hips, half smile on her lips. Standing next to her was Jose, the ranch's youngest occupant, and he was holding onto the top of his cowboy hat with one hand and had an astonished look on his face. Jose's mouth hung open, revealing crooked teeth. "Nice shootin' there, stranger. That bottle didn't know what was coming. And what fancy gunplay," said Christina. "He is like some gunslinger straight from the Wild West." "How did you do that, mister?" wondered Jose aloud. Ethan shrugged. "I have a lot of time on my hands, and not a terrible lot of things to fill it with. This calms my nerves." "Let's see it again, mister. Shoot something else." Ethan nodded, then turned back to the targets, standing stock still. He stood there for a good 10 seconds, lasting until the tension could be snapped with a knife. Ethan pulled out the age 36 Colt revolver quicker than it takes a bolt of lightning to hit the ground, right-handed, and fired 3 times in a row. 2 cans and a bottle met their untimely demise. "Amazing!" cried Jose, visibly awed. "Well now, with shootin' like that, we sure don't have nothin' to worry about as far as that white cougar that's been prowlin' around, eatin' our people and cattle." "Where'd you learn to do that?" wondered Christina, quite astonished at the impressive display of marksmanship. "My father, some. I taught most of it to myself." "Really? Really like a gunslinger," said a woozy Jose, the excitement getting to him a little and making him stumble. "I got a sight in the rifle now," said Ethan, pulling the Winchester 1886 out of the holster on his back. He worried over it a bit before kneeling down and aiming at the round circle he cut into the barn. It wasn't long at all before he fired 3 times. The sound was deafening. "Holy cow, mister! I never heard nothing so loud in my life." Ethan offered the gun to Jose. "Want to try? I'm warning you, though. It kicks like an ornery mule." Jose shook his head emphatically. "No." To witness such perfection was enough. Ethan walked over to the barn and examined his shots. They were closely grouped, lower down and slightly to the left of center in the circle. It was almost full dark before Ethan was satisfied enough with his arms to go inside and turn in. Now he was out here on the snowy and desolate Mesa de Blanco Plateau, with only his guns for company. And he was stalking an enormous albino cougar through the unforgiving wilderness. And Ethan's prey was a proven man-eater. If it spotted Ethan first, he was sure that he wouldn't even hear the damn thing at all before it had its fang-ridden mouth around his neck. The struggle would be brief. Then it would most likely haul Ethan's bloody corpse back to its lair to munch on at its own leisure. Grim thought that. Still, he was sure he could put the monster down with a good shot or two from the .50 caliber Winchester rifle. It really all came down to who saw the other first. But Ethan was also beginning to worry about the weather. It was starting to snow even harder, and the wind was picking up. With full dark right around the corner, getting caught out in a storm like this could be quickly fatal. He trudged through the icy, blinding snow, eager to find some kind of shelter, or, at worst, a large snowbank he could dig his way into and spend the night. Ethan quickly came up against an impassable, nearly vertical cliff wall, and he skirted along it arbitrarily to the left, keeping the cliff within arm's length to his right. Ethan stoically made it about another half-mile before finding the going almost impossible and the visibility worse than nil. The cold was making his limbs and face very numb, and it was getting harder to move with every strenuous, aching step. Then, like a shining beacon of blessed hope, Ethan managed to catch a glimpse of what appeared to be some kind of torchlight, and it couldn't be farther than 20 feet away. Even in this hellish storm, he was sure he could make it. Ethan stumbled into a cave not a moment too soon, his strength about to completely give out. A cozy series of somber lanterns were lit along the left cave wall, hanging from studs nailed into support posts or sitting ensconced in cleverly made recesses notched into the rock wall. The cave was unusually warm and inviting, at least when compared to outside. It seemed to have been mostly man-made and was almost smooth. Such was the care that had been made when the tough, mineral-streaked rock had been picked at and blasted thoroughly by dynamite, by at least several men for a very, very long time. Not far in, maybe about 50 yards from the cave entrance, and relieved to be out of the storm, Ethan came upon a quaint mining shack. Its wooden planks built right into the side of the shaft itself. The door to the shack was wide open and was hanging at a severe angle, nearly off its hinges. Ethan also noticed there were some scratches on the wall near the door jamb, but his brain was becoming foggy. and it didn't completely register. He was just so awfully cold and tired. There had to be some kind of boudoir or chair in that old shack that he could sleep on, just for a little while, until the storm passed and daybreak came. The weary trapper stumbled into the cabin and ineffectually tried to close the broken door behind him. He soon gave up and looked around the room in slumped lethargy. It was dim in here, only one low-lit lantern on a makeshift wooden table in the center of the room. There was only one other piece of furniture, which was a tattered cot in the corner of the room. But at least it seemed to be roomy enough to sleep two normal-sized men comfortably. Ethan put the rifle down in a clumsy motion on the center table, then lurched over to the bed in order to lie down. He had barely gotten his boots off and leaned his head back on the straw-filled pillowcase before he drifted off into a deep, seemingly endless sleep in which no dreams came. The last thing Ethan noticed before entering the warm sea of immeasurable darkness was that the bed smelled alarmingly like cat urine. Ethan awoke to find a half-ton of murderous, purring feline on top of his chest, apparently not shy to use Ethan as a bed warmer, sleeping the night away peacefully on what felt like a very full stomach. I should have known better, Ethan thought bitterly, as he eyed the massive canines poking awkwardly out of a foul-smelling cat jaw, not inches from his face. He could see tiny bits of meat still stuck in its oversized fangs. It didn't look like it could close its monstrous overbite, and right now, the thing was sawing logs away in a loud and sonorous, purring rumble that vibrated Ethan's chest. Its eyes were closed. Maybe. His arms were pinned to his side, and he knew he wouldn't be able to reach the SAA with either hand because the holster was in the wrong place to grab it under the mass of white fur and teeth that nearly smothered him. The rifle was a no-go, not until he got this cat off him. The .36 Patterson, however, Ethan drew the .36 in one smooth, slow motion of his right hand, barely even rustling the beast cougar's shaggy fur coat before thrusting the barrel into the cat's side and firing off 3 shots as fast as he could. The effect was instantaneous, loud, and very bloody. The cougar leapt to its feet and staggered off the bed before jumping back in shock. It knocked over the table and sent the rifle and lantern crashing to the floor, shattering it and leaving a burning puddle of kerosene. The enormous ghost cat faced Ethan with its bulbous, pink, glittering eyes, staring hatefully at him through the haze of gun smoke from the .36. It kept its wounded side carefully toward the rocky cave wall. Ethan wiped warm cougar blood off his bearded face. This was going to get ugly. It was somewhat dim in the cabin, the only light coming in through the broken door and the tiny lake of fire burning in the center of the room, and the shadows abounded, merged and commingled in a dizzying fashion. Ethan pulled the .45 single-action army from its holster and aimed it directly at the snarling beast's skull with deadly precision and a steady arm. "Good night, Espiritu Gato," said Ethan under his breath as he pulled the trigger. Thunder boomed. Later that morning, a bedraggled, snow-studded Ethan stumbled back into town. The townsfolk gasped when they saw how his leathers were slashed deeply by what looked like a monstrous beast's paw. On the trapper's broad shoulders was the pelt of a giant, white, now docile cougar that would forever be remembered in Mesa Pueblo as Espiritu Gato, the midnight ghost cat that was slain by the lone trapper Ethan in mortal combat, finally bringing peace to a beleaguered town. So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.